Today we're going to present a paper called Discrimination Between Brain Cognitive States Using Shannon Entropy and Skewness Information Measures. This paper was presented, co-authored by Davis, Schubler, G, and Cosma. In an initial study conducted in 2015, EGI provided an equipment of 256 electrodes for us to measure brain dynamics in different states, modalities. One was mathematical equations performed mentally, silently, and in a quiet space. The other one was a meditation modality, and the next one was an open eye modality, looking at the window, which was a very intense modality for 7 minutes. After that, we took all the data that was recorded with the electrodes, and we configured the matrix so that we could display the values or manipulate the values of these different areas of the brain placed in different electrodes. So the matrix here, it's very well explained. This represents the facial area. This represents the prefrontal cortex, frontal, temporal, central, occipital, and facial area. We used some methods for signal processing, of course, basically to calculate the Shannon entropy index. We use the frequency spectrum and we turn it into a probability distribution by normalizing it. This is the way we normalize it. The power spectrum of each band I, divided the total power, gave us the probability of that band to happen. And then, and then we have the probabilities of each band inputted into the calculation of the Shannon entropy index. This is, of course, total power, and PWI, it's the power spectrum of the corresponding band I. Then we computed the Pearson's first skewness coefficients, PSK, which is basically the mean of the distribution minus the mode divided the standard deviation. This is standard calculation, and we discretize the spectrum in bands of steps of 2 from 4 Hertz to 48 Hertz, and for that we calculated each the power of each frequency band, and which gave us then the measurements to calculate the mean and the standard deviation for this particular distribution. Then we finally calculated a measurement of a distance between both the entropy index and the skewness coefficient, and the log 10 of that gives us a very beautiful classifier or initial classifier between brain states, as we're going to see. To test our methodology and the computations of these measurement information indexes, we actually chose a gamma distribution, a beta distribution with different parameters. This set of parameters, S1 and S2, gives us a distribution which is skewed to the left. Scenario 3, 4, and 5 give us a symmetric distribution with different standard deviations. And these last two particular distributions are also from the beta, gives us a right skew distribution, which would be a mirror image of the first two. And of course, here we see that the entropy index for S1 is higher than the entropy index of S2. This is a more spread distribution than this one, therefore has more probabilities, values for different probabilities. This is a distribution that is symmetric but has different standard deviations, and of course the more spread, the higher the entropy index. And this, which is a symmetric distribution to the symmetric towards the y-axis, it's just a mirror image, presents the same values. For the Pearson skewness coefficient, we see that of course for S1 and S2 these are the same values, but for S3, S4, and S5 the skewness coefficient is 0, since it's a symmetric distribution, has no skewness. And you can start to see here that for the higher the highest the values of the entropy, Shannon entropy index, the lowest the values of the Pearson skewness coefficient. So they behave in an opposite direction. Okay, we then took those expected values that we calculated before, particularly for scenario 1 and scenario 2, and we generated simulated data of the same distributions. And of course, they should be very similar, and they are. And we saw that now having the data, we can estimate alpha 1 and alpha 2 for both distributions. And then we can compare the simulation with the expected values just visually, because I mean, we just wanted to have a way of testing our methodology with data and with simulated data and know that everything was consistent. And here we can see that the highest, the Shannon entropy index, the lowest, then the Pearson's skewness coefficient. The lowest, the entropy, Shannon entropy index, the highest, the Pearson's skewness coefficient. And this is now real data. This experimental data, we collected data, as I said before, from 256 electrodes. And in this particular modality, which is man-mind, all the three participants, participants C, K, and S, give us different entropy indexes, Shannon entropy indexes for the different electrodes, and also different Pearson's skewness coefficients for the different electrodes. And you can see that I mean, every one of them is pretty different in terms of dynamics. But when we put these in a picture like this, where we take the 256 electrodes and we arrange them in a matrix of 16 times 16, that gives us the different areas of the brain, back, front, right, and left, then we can start to see how the brain dynamics related to the Shannon entropy index and the PSK start to give us different impressions of and the differences between these the brain dynamics of these participants in different modalities. Particularly for MapMind, you can see that both participant C and participant K show less entropy and less skewness than participant S. And participant S has more entropy in the frontal area of the brain. Okay, then for the meditation, it's very similar. You know, MapMind and meditation show similar results, since the MapMind exercise was or experiment was performed in silence. So basically, when there were no questions to be calculated in the mental space, the participant was quietly meditating as usual. So there are some differences between the two, but basically they look the same. They're dominated by the meditative states. In this modality in open eyes, all the participants show much more entropy, and so this modality has the brain actively changing from band to band, and of course that creates a different distribution of probability, a different spectrum. And here we can see the differences between the two modalities and this modality, and also still the differences between participants. Here we plotted the different Shannon entropy indexes. I mean, for participants, this is the PSK and the Shannon entropy indexes in Y and X axis. And we can see that for the different modalities and the different participants, they have different kind of distributions where these points are in terms of values for both of the PSK and the Shannon entropy index, which is an indication of these bimodal distributions, that the brain in different areas behaves in different ways, that they may be clusters of behavior in different areas of the brain, which we have shown before, generally speaking, in the pictures. And if we color the different areas of the brain as front, middle, and back, we can see that the red and the black are differentiated. The red and the black here coincide, and some of the black and the blue coincide for this particular participant. And then we have here too a similar situation but different. The red, it's now with higher values of PSK and similar values of entropy, but here there is more, even higher values of entropy and skewness and so on. So, okay, so this, it's telling us that in the future we have to be very careful in how we analyze the different areas of the brain in terms of entropy and the Pearson's skewness coefficients, because they may give us indications of how different the brain areas are behaving in different modalities in different types of meditations for different participants. Okay, finally, these are, the log ratios, which, as I said before, they're good classifiers of the different participants' brain states for the different modalities. You can see that very clearly here. And in the future, we intend to explore, the relationship between these two measurement information indexes more deeply. For now, this is beyond the scope of this paper and presentation. So now I will say that finally, these are, before I discuss the paper's results and the future perspective, that these are the spectrums, average spectrums for all participants. You can see that for participant C, that participant is most of the time in alpha, though this spectrum in OE is significantly different than these two, and so on. You have the different spectrums for every single one of them. This is the average spectrum taken in windows of 500 milliseconds or 1000 milliseconds or something like that. So we present a combined use of the Shannon entropy index and the Pearson's skewness coefficient, similar to Planckian distribution indexes used in previous studies by G. And then the results are in agreement with previous studies when analyzing and classifying different brain dynamics associated in different brain areas for different participants in different modalities. This study is far from conclusive, and it's only intended at the moment to add value to our toolbox of modeling and analysis of brain dynamics. The analysis that we have conducted here so far has given us new insights into how potentially derive useful information about the creation of knowledge and meaning in the brain, which ought to be used together with the results obtained in previous studies. We also see that perhaps one of the most salient and challenging aspects of this study is how we ought to interpret the skewness coefficient in relationship to the entropy, Shannon entropy index. The skewness coefficient gives us an indication of how skewed the distribution is. And this indicates that some frequency bands are more probably observed than others when measuring brain dynamics, which is similar to what we've done before when we used dominant frequency, which is at the mode of the distribution. But this way of calculating the PSQ gives us a richer understanding of the spectrum. So we think that this could improve what we've done before. There are many factors affecting the log ratio, since a distribution may be very skewed, yet more even than a less skewed distribution, which is more like log normal, or a Planckian-like, as shown in figure 11. As mentioned in previous studies, the shape of the power spectrum associated with MadMind and meditation seems to be more concentrated around the alpha band for more advanced meditators, in this case participant C and participant K, then meditators that are more sensory active, like in the case of participant S. Bimodal distribution suggests that there is a mix of brain areas or bands that ought to be treated with great care. However, we find that overall, both H and PSK are able to detect the main differences in brain dynamics between participants and modalities. We've become aware during the study that these information measures by themselves are insufficient, but we were aware of that too in previous studies with other measures, so combining them all may improve our toolbox for understanding brain states. We certainly expect that states associated to inner peace, which are derived from meditation, will require a deeper understanding of the relationship between brain dynamics and cognition. And of course, this complements the work of other people like Vitiello, and also the work that we've done on the cycle of creation of knowledge and meaning, as explained by Freeman, Davis, Gillette, and Cosma. In future studies, we intend to use these toolbox of methodologies and indexes that we have created in the last years to better understand the interaction of brain dynamics with heart and respiration dynamics, and to see if we can find meaningful states that combine all these measurements, whereby meditators are able to generate states at will of inner peace that are meaningful to them. And we think that if people master generating inner peace at will, then that, of course, contributes to individual inner peace. And if more individuals do that, then that should contribute to social harmony. And on that note, I want to end the presentation by expressing our gratitude to the members of the Embassy of Peace in New Zealand, particularly to Karen, who helped us put together this presentation, and also to the people of Electrical Geodesic, who participated with us in the original study and data acquisition by providing the equipment for EEG measurements and the platform, and for that we're still grateful. Of course, our gratitude goes to the people of Cosmos Research Lab, which have been, since the beginning of our journey on studying brain dynamics, supporting the studies on human cognition, and we intend to continue to contribute to this field in the future. And now I'll leave you with a period of questions and answers. Thanks for your attention.